Welcome to Signature Required. It is intended for Tennesseans by Tennesseans. The heart of a Tennessean, the volunteer state, is serve, and we do so largely without self-promotion.
And these are genuine people that get up every day and want to make art, or want to educate the nations, or want to have a heart of love in a way that makes a difference.
Learn from 50 years of experience, take a nugget away, and then go share it with a friend. Congressman Mark Green of the 7th District, welcome to Signature Required.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really glad to be with y'all.
We are really thrilled to have you on the show today. We have a lot to be able to cover and talk about, but where I want to start is a lot of our listeners don't bring any political background at all. And so if you can just start at the basics of the role that you've played, how many districts there are in Tennessee, just give us the real basic, because I want them to really appreciate what and who we have here on the show.
You're kind. No, I recently served as the chairman of the Committee on Homeland Security. So the United States Congress has, I think, 20 standing committees. And, I served as the congressman for the 7th District of Tennessee. There are 9 in the state, so one of 9. And I represented District 7, which is downtown Nashville, and some really cool parts of Tennessee. I got Fort Campbell, I got rural, I got agricultural, I got industrial manufacturing in Washington, and voted on legislation, advocated for constituents, those kinds of things. And after my second term, got selected to be the chairman, and I was the chairman of Homeland Security, did a lot of stuff in that capacity. Homeland Security is everything from Secret Service to ICE to Border Patrol, Cybersecurity, CISA, which manages our federal cybersecurity. So 23 agencies, and wrote their budget, passed the laws that empowered them to do their job.
I always find it so fascinating when you're in those cybersecurity, Homeland Security, like the things that you know that all the rest of us are like, ugh.
Yeah, the world is not, I would say the world is in a unique place right now. We're transforming from a unipolar world where the United States was the single superpower to a multipolar world. And I say I hope it's multipolar, because typically peace occurs when there's a multipolar structure to the international sort of setting. If it's bipolar, where there's U.S. and then the China axis, that's bad. That's a potential for conflict. If you go back even all the way to the 30 Years' War, and go from I think it was 40 or something, 42, when the Peace of Westphalia formed the Western structure for sovereignty of governments. Whenever there's been a bipolar alignment, it's typically resulted in a major conflict after. So what we want to do is to try to prevent that from happening, right? But it's trying to happen very, very, very. And if it does happen, then we need more allies and friends than we probably believe or know.
I also think a huge part of your story is from the time before you were in Congress, and you've written a number of articles, you've written a great series of different books, but A Night with Saddam,
Yep.
Maybe tell a little bit of that story, because
Sure.
I think that is a huge part of the precursor for why you probably were sitting on some of the committees that you were sitting on.
Yeah, I spent 24 years in various capacities in the U.S. Army. I went to West Point, was an infantry officer and a ranger for about 9 years. My father nearly died, and I went to med school because the impact that doctor who saved his life had on me. Became an Army physician and then an Army Special Operations physician, which led me to the capture of Saddam Hussein and then interviewing him the night we caught him. That was surreal, to say the least, to be a part of history in that way. And of course, the most awesome part of it was just serving those men and women who are the elite of the elite, to be their doctor and to take care of their kids when we're in the rear, so to speak, and then to be with them managing the traumas that would occur in combat. That was just very rewarding working with these guys. I mean, just unbelievable.
And so you've served in Congress for how many years now?
So did Congress for 6.5, so 3 terms. Was very honored to get the chairmanship after just 2 terms. I think you have to go back 70 years to find someone who was able to do that. But I fulfilled the goals that we set for it. And so it was time for me to find something else to do. And I did what I promised the president I would do. And I promised the people of the 7th District I would do. And so I'm an action guy. I got to go to the next project. And we've got a good one we're working on now. So
Well, I appreciate that a lot, because part of what I think, in order to tell your story correctly, to look at all of your service to the country and to the state of Tennessee, we need to address the last 18 to 24 months.
Sure.
Because there's been a lot of news and a lot of press. And part of the challenge from my vantage point is that you are an elected official for a lot of people. And that comes along with kind of this separation from you as a human,
very much so.
Mark Green, versus someone that is one of the highest public figures in the land. And so what I want to start off with is giving a little bit of context and a timeline that I think a lot of people listening from the 7th District and from the state of Tennessee would really benefit from having some clarity on. Starting in early 2024, you initially announce a resignation from Congress, your plan to step down, and then you change that decision and decide, okay, I'm gonna run. And towards the end of that campaign, you end up having a very public and unfortunate divorce and media cycle and stuff that no human being on the planet wants to go through.
Not pleasurable, no.
You get elected into Congress, pass the big, beautiful bill, and then announce a resignation, and we're having the first special election in a number of decades here in Tennessee. So that's kind of the overarching story. So can you take us back to the start?
Well, obviously for me, the holding the Mayorkas Biden administration accountable for the failure at the border was the sort of thing I wanted to make sure I accomplished before I got out of Congress. I had said that I would, and we went through that process. The House had to impeach him. So I led that impeachment effort. And because it was Homeland Security and because the border falls under us, they gave us that mission. And so I took it, execute my orders, duty. And so we did it. We painted the picture over, I think it was 5 or 6 months, did the impeachment. And I think Jordan probably stayed in basketball too long, right? I mean, there was a better time for him to have gotten out, right? Or not Congress, but basketball. And I didn't want to be that, right? So I accomplished what I wanted to do. I went to everybody and said, "Look, I'm not going to run for re-election. I'll finish this term and I'll not run for re-election."
Because that was kind of the epicenter. I mean, the border, that was the height of the crisis.
It was.
Anyone near that was not escaping the shrapnel of what was occurring.
100%, right? That was at the time, and that's what resulted in, I think, President Trump winning, was the promise to fix the issue that they had created. My responsibility was accountability. And so we did the impeachment. It was successful. I thought, this is the time to make an announcement. And the press beat me, right? I wasn't prepared to make the announcement but once the word got out, it's like, well, I don't want them leading the story. So we made an announcement a little faster than we probably would have. That aside, as soon as I did, I got literally thousands of calls from constituents and from, of course, leaders in Congress, all the way up to Marsha Blackburn, reached out. And then the next call came from POTUS. And President Trump was like, "Look, I'm running for re-election, and I need you to help me secure, get the legislation that will support what I'm doing on the border." And I said, "Yes, sir, I'll do that." And that's the big, beautiful bill. Mm-hmm. So we got that done, and I said, "Okay, I'm going to move on to the next mission." And that's basically what the decision was.
I've heard he's hard to say no to.
He's pretty hard to say no to.
I've
Yeah.
heard.
I mean, I was sitting in my basement when I got the phone call. I had 4 or 5 friends, fellow congressmen sitting there. And I'm like, should I take it? And they go, yeah, put him on speaker. So I'm talking to him, and he's like, hey, I think this is the first time in history that a president has asked a congressman to run for re-election. And I'm like, yes, sir, probably. And, he said some very nice things about me, and then I said, yes, sir. You're not going to tell him no, right? So I said yes, and of course secured the seat. And then, there was some fear about the seat at that point, because the candidate running had been a popular mayor. Now, she had some baggage too, right? But there was fear that whoever we put up might have a challenge there. So that was part of the motivation of them saying, no, we really need to have you run and keep this seat and secure it for Republicans. And I said, absolutely, I'd do it. And of course, I won that seat, that election, with the biggest majority I'd ever won. So,
Congressman, I was hoping we were going to get a Donald Trump voice impersonation.
Not from me. The best for that's Pat Fallon from Texas. He's phenomenal at it.
Okay, so we move forward in the narrative to September in 2024, when this is where the separation of things that are deeply personal come into public life. And so I think it's better for me to just give you the floor to say anything that you want to say about that period of time and that development.
Sure. I mean, I had a personal failure. I made some bad decisions that were coming out of some personal emptiness, and I would not recommend that pathway. But it resulted in trauma on a lot of people in my family, my children and my wife. And I'd just say, very personal. Don't necessarily want to get into all of the details of it, but it didn't detract from the job I was doing, because that's just who I am. But it did make life incredibly difficult for a period of time. There have been, obviously, the legal challenge of going through divorce and all of that has been a difficulty. Didn't necessarily play in my decision to step out. Clearly I got reelected within 6 weeks of those announcements, but it's still very hard, and it's still something that I'm having to deal with. Yeah. So.
It was so hard because we know you personally, and we've spent time with you, and we've been big supporters, and that's just a moment. Nobody wakes up in a day and is like, what I want to do today is, while I am running for public office, I want to file for divorce. That sounds like a really fun
I don't encourage that
moment. So nobody wakes up with that. And so, with all empathy for that, I think it's also hard, as Spence and I sit here too, I just have a question about, we've considered, running for public office someday, or is someday, do we want to serve the nation in another capacity, or our state in another capacity? And everyone tells us not to do it because they're like, it's going to really hurt your family. And we've cared about you so much. And then to see it hurt your family was hard on a personal level. You were going through it. We left you alone, but we were praying for you, because you never wish that on anybody. I mean, is there a way to have a family in the public life, or does it really just kind of set you up to fail?
I don't think it sets people up to fail. The problem for me were those things that were missing in my marriage. And I just chose wrong. So I, as on a personal level, made a big mistake, and you deal with it afterward. You can serve. I mean, most people don't fall into the trap that I fell into. But it happened, and so you have to move forward. I think people can serve and survive, and not lots of people do. But you have to be really connected together. If you go into it with some lack of connection between husband and spouse, then then there's going to be some trouble and some challenges. COVID, my wife started her own business back home. So I'm in DC sort of by myself. It was a setup for the mistakes that were made. And I would encourage people who get in to not do that. You got to do it together. You really have to do it together. And whatever your relationship is, and whatever those needs are in the relationship, you got to get those met, because Satan is there to divide, right? And so all of those pressures are going to come, and you just have to stay connected.
And you brought up your faith just now. I know you are a deeply faithful
I'm
man.
Very much so, a deep faith guy, and this is something I never envisioned would ever happen to me.
Sure.
And I never thought I would be the one that made that mistake. But maybe that was part of my mistake, right? Was saying this will never happen to me. And, it did. So.
I really appreciate your authentic answers in that. That's not an easy thing.
There's you just have to own it. There's no, I can't say that, oh, it's somebody else's fault. Mm-hmm. And I have thus far avoided and will continue to avoid addressing where others failed me, right? That left a deficit that I tried to fill another way. So I'm not going there. My wife is a great human being, and I only hope the best for her in the future. So.
May I ask one more question in this? You're a father of two.
Yeah, I got 2 kids. It's very hard for them. I will say divorce may be harder on older children than younger children, because my 2 have really struggled with this. I have, I think, as good a relationship with them now as I could after all of this. But my son, is a very deep faith believer, follower of Christ, it's been hard to repair that relationship with him. He had me on a pedestal, and he aspired to be like his dad, and he's an Army Ranger now, infantry officer, just like I was, and has a very successful military career going for himself. And then his father, has a failure, and it's been, I think, challenging for him to accept that I was human, or that I am human. And that's been, heartbreaking for me, but hopefully instructional to him. And we continue to communicate well and talk about it, but it's difficult.
Mark, a mentor friend of mine says that all that wisdom is accumulated scar tissue.
There's a lot to be learned with. I think most of the lessons I've learned in life, whether it was in the Army or running a healthcare company or in the state Senate or in Congress, have been with my beak in the dirt, right? So when you fall on your face and then you pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and move on to the next thing. That's where the lessons kind of come from. I think Maxwell even wrote a book about it, Failing Forward, right?
Yes.
So, I've learned a lot from this.
Well, certainly from a faith perspective that we all share together, no one makes it off this rock we call Earth alive. No one makes it sin-free, error-free. Heavens knows that all of us, while it looks different for each of us, have things that we desperately wish that we could take back, desperately wish we could undo, words that we didn't say. And so I think your positioning to say that this is something that I own, but something that hopefully can serve as an example, is an incredible gift out of enormous pain.
Yeah. I will tell you the hardest thing, and I'll try to say this without my voice cracking, but the hardest thing in it all for me was to get to a place where I felt God's forgiveness. Like I said, I never expected it. I never expected this would be me, right? And to walk confidently afterwards, right? Because all my life I was praying to God, help me with this next win, right? Never help me deal with this loss,
Yeah.
right? And so this is new for me. This is a new place for me to be confident in his forgiveness and then move confidently forward. I don't know that I've mastered that yet. So that's probably the biggest challenge. Just know, Christ's blood, which I've talked about to so many people, right? All my life, I worked for the Navigators, ministry group. I led people in Bible studies. I've helped disciple and mentor young Christians, and here I am dealing with my own failure, saying, "Okay, the Christ's blood's covering this." For me, has been really hard.
Sometimes I think that we overlook that God loves us enough to bring our sin forward. And we sometimes think, oh, if he loved me, he would keep it hidden. Or if he loved me enough, like this would never come to light. But I think sometimes God uses those moments where it's the consequences of our own action, but he uses it to sanctify and regenerate and create a new heart that I think shows his love for us even more. It's the old saying, like, you know who your friends are when you're successful.
Yeah.
It's when you're down that you find out who the real are. And I think you are testifying the fact that the Lord has been there with you when you weren't winning.
Yeah. That was a new experience for me because, if you look at my resume, I've had a lot of wins, right? So you go, okay, God helped me through all that. My success comes from God. Ooh, this isn't success. This was a personal failure. And, knowing that God forgives me, feeling confidently to move forward, that's my current, thing I'm telling myself.
I think in the Bible, before the Lord uses anybody, there's a wilderness season that happens before the Lord calls them into whatever the next chapter is. And usually that wilderness season involves some type of hard work and intensity that takes your mind off of all sorts of other things and gets it really focused onto something specific. And so, for you, winning the election 6 weeks after all of this goes on, and now you're in a Trump presidency who has, by all accounts, works Congress and the Senate about 5 times harder than I think previous administrations have worked them before.
Yeah.
You had a huge undertaking to try to get to what has been dubbed the big, beautiful bill. And you pushed relentlessly through that in order to get that thing passed. So talk about some of that, is that you're coming out of a really, really difficult season personally into a professional responsibility to pass legislation that, has a generational impact to it. So talk about that season and what the passing of that bill meant for you in Congress.
Yeah. This was an opportunity to codify into law the things that should have been happening at the border, particularly as it relates to my slice of it. I had the Homeland Security piece. And so that's increasing the size of Customs and Border Protection, taking care of the men and women who do that mission, giving them the resources to actually achieve real security at our border, and then codifying those decisions that President Trump had made through executive action. So, of course, you've got moderate Republicans and you've got super conservative Republicans. And the challenge in the Congress right now is Republicans represent their districts. Democrats vote a straight agenda. So it's much harder for us to knit together a product that will work for both our very moderate districts in the country. It's not that those individuals are moderate. It's that they represent a group of people in this country who believe the moderate. My district is more over here, and our folks believe in that conservative model, very conservative model. And so how do we knit this together so that we keep the coalition and get us to a place? And there literally was, I'd be 2:00 in the morning working on the New Yorkers who are in these very moderate seats who are saying, hey, we have to have this in the bill for us to get reelected. And of course, we want the majority, because without the majority, you do nothing in Congress.
Yeah.
And so stitching that together was not easy at all. But we did it, and we got it to a place where we kept those guys whole and we kept these guys as happy as we could get them. You know, my side of the Republican Party, you know, it's hard to please us because we believe in an America that's a little differently than, say, a Philadelphia suburb, right? Mm-hmm. But we got to have the Philadelphia suburbs to get anything done. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, we pulled it off and we got it done. And I was on the phone with the White House. I was on a trip overseas, and literally the folks from the White House are saying, hey, we want you to pull this part of the bill. And I'm like, no, I'm not pulling that part of the bill. And, you know, really right up to the committee hearing when we passed it, I was negotiating with the White House on stuff. So, wow. Yeah, it was a challenge, but we got it done.
And so to kind of bring this story arc to the conclusion, you know, once it's done, you're saying, all right,
yeah, I did what I said I could do. And look, short of the big, beautiful bill, I'm not sure Congress, of course, passing budgets and NDAAs, the things they normally do, you know, that part's easy. And I'm a guy who likes hard challenges, obviously, even when I stub my toe to get there. But it is, I'm a big vision, you know, I want to accomplish big goals. And there was an opportunity that came up to build a company that could help America in the competition with China. And opportunities were driving this. And so I had an opportunity to do a big vision thing for our country in the private sector, and nothing left to do in the list of things I wanted to do in Congress. And so I'm like, okay, they're going to be fine. We just gained 2 seats through very tragic circumstances where Democrats had passed. And so I jumped out, and I went to Mike Johnson and I said, hey, look, here's what I'm looking at. And he said, you should go. Absolutely. And we joked about, you know, what happens when he's done in Congress, and maybe he comes and works with me. But it's a big vision for the company Prosimos that I've started. And, you know, our country is facing some global challenges, and helping American businesses meet that need, I think, is something that I can do. And that's what I did. So.
And from the timing of it, I think for those that see the timing and say, you know, was it the urgency of the other opportunity that you saw that window was closing, or was it a dynamic that you were perhaps there longer than what you thought you were going to be, but you served to make sure that bill passed? Like, help me understand.
A little bit of both of those.
Okay.
You know, I had accomplished what I said I wanted to do, and that was the big, beautiful bill and codifying all that. But the urgency of the opportunity was real, and that window was going to close. Because to do this very audacious goal, I needed to seize that moment. And now I'm in a place where I can help American businesses go internationally into some relationships that are very important. Mm-hmm. Venezuela needs to be put into a box. Maduro needs to be put into a box. And the opportunities in Guyana and the other parts of Latin America to ensure that we keep our backyard with American businesses there and not Chinese businesses is a national security issue for the country, right? And that window would have closed. The opportunity to get my foot in and do that, that window would close. So I'm done. The opportunity's there, and it's timely, and so I made the decision.
What do you say, though? I mean, you've spent your whole life in public service,
yeah,
right?
My whole 36 years, almost all of my adult life, I've been serving the country.
And then you have your Tennesseans that during the hardest time of that 36 years were like, okay, he stubbed his toe, to use your words, but we're still going to give him the money and the support to move in. that might feel a little bit of whiplash right now? Like, I get the vision of what you're trying to accomplish, but what would you say to your comrades in arms, your constituents?
I think to my constituents, I would say, there is something bigger here. We are contending for the world order. I mean, we are in a battle between us and our Western world order and a world order where facial recognition is used to suppress freedom. We cannot let that world order win. And I have a unique opportunity to empower U.S. businesses to make foreign countries dependent upon American business. And if we can make foreign countries dependent on American business, we maintain those alliances. We keep the world order the way it is. If we lose that and Chinese companies go in and become essential to those governments flip to China. And then this battle for alliances and the polarization of the world, we lose. So I'm about America winning and China losing this battle for the world order. And where I sit in Congress, the productivity level in Congress, one, wasn't fulfilling, even though I probably did more in my 3 terms than most congressmen do. No one's ever impeached a sitting cabinet secretary, and passing the legislation that I've done. But the productivity level, the ability to be a part of this vision and to make something happen for this vision, the opportunity wasn't there in Congress. I can go and help a concrete manufacturer in Tennessee secure a contract in Guyana, make that country dependent upon cement from America and concrete from America, or poultry from America, or whatever. And then that country is aligned with the United States of America. It's not aligned with China. So if I do that throughout the world, we win the battle with China. And I think having ships and, Pete's doing a great job. Hexet's doing a great job. The president's doing that's taken care of. But the business side, we have American companies that are disengaging globally. And we need, I'm not saying let's take manufacturing from the U.S. overseas. I don't want to do that. I want to bring manufacturing home to the U.S. But market share in foreign countries should be owned by American companies. And then those countries are dependent on us. And that interdependence economically can help us win this battle for the world order. And that's the vision of Prosimos. Yes, it's a big, bold goal, but I've never shot for the moon. I usually shoot for Jupiter, so, and then you wind up on the moon, but that's what we're doing, and we'll see if we're successful.
Because before I close this chapter and squarely look towards the future, I really do want to come back to where we began the podcast, which is to say, you have served the 7th District in ways that they've never had the types of congressmen sitting in the types of senior positions that they have had you sit in. And so when you look back over your time in Congress, or you can pull from before that too, but if I pull up the Mark Green Wikipedia page and it's written by you to say, here are the 2 or 3 things that I've been most proud of in my service in Congress or before, what are a couple of those things that maybe people know about, but maybe they don't, that you can say, remember me for this when I served in the 7th District?
Well, before the 7th, obviously the Saddam Hussein thing and being a part of that historical moment is something that, I was in the right place at the right time, but I earned my slot there, right? So that is a life accomplishment that I'll always want to talk about. But then in the state Senate, everybody talked about ending the Hall income tax. And everybody went down and got elected, and it never got fixed. And I had PowerPoints. I did PowerPoints to fellow senators and said, look, this is the financial impact on Tennessee. And it took 4 years of running a version of that bill to finally be the guy that led the fight and ended what was the last remaining income tax in Tennessee.
You were putting PowerPoints together before AI was there to be able to put it together for you, right?
I've always done my own PowerPoints, but we did that, and we passed that legislation that ended the Hall income tax. We went from 35th or 40th or something, I don't remember the exact numbers, near the bottom in places to retire to being in the top 5 places in the country to retire, because that was a tax on investment income. It really impacted our seniors, and we got rid of that. They removed the asterisk from Tennessee on no income, and that was probably my proudest moment and a historical moment. Only 2 states in the nation's history have ever repealed a form of an income tax, Alaska and now Tennessee. And in Congress, getting to the chairmanship in 2 terms, of course, the impeachment of Mayorkas, passing the legislation on both cybersecurity and on the big, beautiful bill. And then I started a club in Congress. I wanted to see the rhetoric dialed down. I tried. It was not, we succeeded to some level, but we had Democrats and Republicans coming together for social purposes, and that I think did help some. I'm hopeful they'll continue that now that I'm gone, but we called it Reagan O'Neill after Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, who fought like cats and dogs, but each week they would meet and talk about football or baseball, and they maintained a relationship that allowed them to do good things for the country. So I patterned it after that, and we had a good organization that had about 50 Republicans and 50 Democrats when I left.
Mm-hmm. And you're hoping they'll keep that going?
Yeah, I hope they'll keep that going. I'll stay in touch with Haley Stevens and Pat Fallon and Beth Van Dyne, some of the Republicans, and Haley Stevens is the Democrat who was helping lead it. So yeah, we'll keep pushing them to do that and keep it going.
Before we move to the future, I have to ask, we've talked a little bit about, you have your private Mark Green and you have your public persona, Mark Green. So before we move to talking about the future, what do you wish people knew about what it means to serve in the capacity that you have? Because I think you have had people sing your blessings. You've had people probably throw stones at your house, right? You've seen
I
it
just
both.
saw my favorability ratings are about 70%. President Trump's 92, right? So I don't like the fact, but he's an icon, so I probably would never get to Trump's level. But my favorables are about 70%. My unfavorables have increased from 6 to 13, which was hard to look at, right? But I'm still, the district still views me fairly positively. I think what you're asking is how does a person who gets elected go and do the job well, right? I think that's what you're asking.
Or what do you wish people knew about the nuances of the job, the grind, the day by day of it?
Yeah, how do you do all that and be successful? To be a really good legislator, you need to have those core values that align with your district. You have to be a fighter, but you have to be a smart fighter. You don't, the loudmouths up there don't get things done. And I would get on TV and I would bash and do what I had to do there because that's a part of it. But you have to be sophisticated enough to go to somebody and say, look, this point matters because of this reason, and articulate it well, and then convince them to be on your side of that issue. And it's not the loudmouths that get listened to inside the building. And if you're not listened to inside the building, you don't matter as a congressman. If you're just out on television and that's all you are is this loud voice, well, great. You're the clanging cymbal, right? But you're not effectively driving change. If you want to effectively drive change, you need a sophistication that allows you to go and sit down with somebody in a setting like this and make the argument and make it well and be convincing. And, I found that people listened to me and I was able to get things done. And so when we look to replace me, I'll just put a little plug in. I won't say a name. But we need somebody whose values align with us, who's a fighter, who will fight, but at the same time has the sophistication to sell those ideas in a way that will change other people's minds. And not the people in the district so much, because the district is there. Mm-hmm. You got to be able to change people's minds inside Congress. And that's the person we need to have replace me if we want to continue on this same path.
So, Congressman, I have a favorite saying that there is something called the tyranny of the how, which if you start big ideas asking how, it never works because there's a million reasons why you can say it's not going to work for this and it's not going to work for that, and everybody's eager to squash your how.
Yeah.
So what's much more important to develop first is the why. If you have a powerful why, then you find a way to how.
That's it. I mean, that's pretty much it, right? So the why is, of course, what I articulated earlier.
That's right.
This battle for alliances and how do we get American businesses to see there's market overseas and then to go grab that for American companies, Tennessee companies, right? So it's the how is not as hard as you think. It's finding the right business, finding the opportunity overseas, and then finding the capital. So those are the three challenges, right? Well, the capital is there. I mean, the capital, if you've got a great idea and a market and a good business plan. So what we're really doing is finding the opportunity and then aligning with somebody who's come to me now. I get them a couple of times a day, people reaching out and saying, hey, I've heard what you're doing and we want to expand, a company making body armor. Right, we want to capture more overseas market, and I'm like, okay, great. Let's. These are the 5 countries that I think would be great for. One, they're friends now, and if we're going to give something like body armor that is a sort of national, it's an instrument of war or law enforcement too, right?
Yeah.
So then we want that to be a friendly country. We go to that country, we make the introductions, we help build the business plan, we help them present for capital and put them in front of people who will help finance that. And then we execute. And that's what we're doing right now with multiple opportunities. Businesses right here in Tennessee that feel like they're ready to grow. And they've done what they can inside the state. They've done what they can in interstate commerce. And now they're thinking, let's go international. And so, doing that has been exciting. And it's really just an extension of what you do every day here, business plan, capital, execution of that plan, right?
That makes a ton of sense to me because as a business, thinking about international expansion is usually off limits unless you are in a really significant tier of revenue. Like as Carly and I think as small business owners, we've thought of a lot of ways to add revenue, but to generate revenue overseas is not on the list because
ground
it's
logistics
so
is desperately needed throughout the Caribbean and Latin America, I will tell you.
Yeah.
So if you get to that place where you want to, let me help put you in the right place.
It's amazing because it's so intimidating, but your skill set makes a lot of sense because you just said it yourself. You've had to learn about the cultures of the world, the connections and the networking that you've done over the years in a lot of different capacities does let you offer a value that to a normal small business in Tennessee, they have no chance at being able to try to compete or even have a product that could resonate with people all over the world. And you also help focus it down. I'm not saying, the world is our oyster. It's like, okay, there's probably 3 places that you need to look at. And that in and of itself saves a lot of time and money.
Yes, absolutely. And when I was running my healthcare company, we ran emergency departments for hospitals, right? So I would go to a hospital and say, we can run your emergency department in a patient-centered way that will be profitable enough, and we will make your hospital more successful, right? And we had 52 hospitals in 11 states. At that point, I was really seriously, well, how do I do this overseas? And we looked at London, England. We looked at some places in Africa and all that. We couldn't find the right partner. And so we ultimately didn't expand internationally, right? So I learned from that the key is identifying the right partner in that foreign country to make the connection, and then American businesses can expand. And so that's what we want. We want people dependent upon America, other countries, governments particularly. So that's what I'm about now.
this is a total aside, but I just also found this fascinating because you've written a number of op-eds over the years,
Yeah.
and you wrote one that just fascinated me because it was about the North Pole and about the battle and the dynamic internationally.
The Arctic,
Yeah, and it's a space that's largely ignored by the whole world, but is of enormous strategic consequence. Um, for those that haven't read it, it's worth a read. But
Oh,
are you
thanks.
going to be doing anything in that space of doing some more writing? I mean, you've been an author, published a couple times. Like, is there anything there, or is it going to be this is your focus for the foreseeable future?
I think there'll be Substacks that I do, and they'll be,
Okay.
talking about how to expand internationally and how America wins, particularly as it relates to the Arctic, minerals, right? So we're helping an urban mining company raise money. They basically melt cell phones and get the rare earths out of them, melt computers. So I'm 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 in that space, but maybe not so much in the Arctic. In Guyana, it's about crude oil and about minerals, bauxite. The president has wanted to decrease our dependence on Canada, and so I'm helping bring American companies to mine in Guyana. So in that space of minerals and what's happening in the Arctic, I'm there, but I'm not in the Arctic. But clearly, I have great relationships with Norway's senior leadership, particularly on the defense side, Finland. So if there's a company that is interested in it, we'll help them get there. But the Arctic, the battle for the Arctic is a national security issue, and we tried to fix that from a Homeland perspective because the icebreakers fall under the Coast Guard, and we have 2, and China has 32. And China's not even an Arctic nation.
And these, you're talking about the big ships that go
Yes,
in and
that
break
cut the ice,
Yeah.
and because the ice is melting, so you're going to see in the near future trade routes change. And of course, we fly across the North Pole when we fly internationally. Shipping that way is going to be much faster and much better. And so I am in the shipping space, obviously, but it's something that we as a country can't neglect. And so when I was at Homeland, we put more money in for ice cutters.
Amazing stories that I could just
Oh,
ask
yeah.
and ask and ask about. That's why I was like, I hope that Substack does come to life, because the things that you think are pretty routine and like, yeah, this was just another day in the office, like there's probably a lot of things you can't share, but hopefully some of the things that you can, I assure you, it's a lot more interesting than maybe what you even think. You can
Okay.
just tell stories about some of the decisions that were made in cybersecurity and Homeland Security and these things that really matter to all Americans, that matter to Tennesseans. But, you've got an incredible military background, both in your district and personally. And so I just hope, and we'll speak a little life into that coming to existence.
That's kind, yes, and I'm sure we'll. I'm not going to disengage completely from political, because what I'm doing is for the purposes of our country, right? So, and I'll make a profit at the same time. I'm not saying that this is a not-for-profit thing, but I want to still be about something bigger than Mark Green, and so yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'll continue to be engaging on that with people and let people know.
Yeah. The way that we land each podcast is I have short fill-in-the-blank questions to ask you that you can either finish in with a word or a short phrase at the end.
Okay.
Yep. All right. You ready?
Yep.
Number 1, the biggest challenge facing the United States right now is blank.
The greatest challenge for the United States is to win the heart of other countries and maintain our alliance structure in a way that supports us should we evolve into a bipolar world.
Looking back on my public service, I'd want people to remember me for blank.
Wow. I think just the whole of it all, the 36 years, I gave, like I said before, the majority of my adult life to the country. There are all the little things that we mentioned earlier, but I think just that Mark Green, gave 36 years of his life and some really tough stuff to to serve the country.
That's really powerful.
Thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks.
I
Thanks for having me.
Spence and I went into this not knowing what to expect. And I think in all of the hard we have discussed, you did it exactly as we hoped you would, which was coming forward with authenticity. And you were very genuine. Nothing was off the record. We got to talk about it. And I'm just really grateful that you were willing to do that, because not just for your constituents and not just for Tennessee, but I think the faith aspect of sharing where we fail and what the Lord does with our next chapters is kind of the whole point of everything. And so that wasn't easy. And I just, I want to take the opportunity to say thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. You know, you got to be wary of the leader who says, we can talk about everything but this other stuff. So it's there. I got to deal with it and move on and try to continue to serve.
Well, and thanks for 36 years.
And Mark, from my perspective too, I want to give you a thanks from the bottom of my heart to be here. Your legacy is a really, really important one. You have served this nation and this state in ways that will be remembered for a very long time. And the character of a man is revealed in their hardest moments. And it's easy to ride when the tide is high, but when the tide goes out, it's a whole different thing. And I really appreciate your transparency and authenticity. And I can say from Carly and I that we certainly wish you the very best in this next chapter. And we thank you for spending the time with us here today.
Well, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it.